恭敬大德圣听，维持法会，济一切众生，请转妙法轮，教导我们如何了生脱世离苦得乐，殊胜无生。Will the Sangha with great virtue, out of compassion for the sake of this assembly and all living beings, please turn the wonderful Dharma wheel to teach us how to leave suffering and attain bliss and end birth and death, and quickly realize non-birth.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one. Namo sadanto sucheto ye alahati sanmiao sanputo che. Wu shang shen shen wei miao fa. 百千万劫难遭遇，我今见闻得受持，愿解如来真实义。Supreme and wondrous Dharma, subtle and profound, rarely is encountered, even in a billion eons. But now we see and hear it and accept it reverently. May we truly understand the Buddha's actual meaning. Hello everyone, welcome to, I believe it is class number 27, is that right? Or 26, I think it's 27. And we're going to continue by reciting Medicine Master Buddha's name 7 times. Namo, quelling disasters, slanting life, Medicine Master Buddha. Namo, quelling disasters, lengthening 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 life, Medicine Master Buddha. Namo, quelling disasters, ending life, Medicine Master Buddha. Namo, quelling disasters, lengthening life, Medicine Master Buddha. Medicine Master does come one, Medicine Master does come one, Medicine Master does come one, Medicine Master does come one. Okay, before I start with the remainder of the 10 vow, does anyone have any reflections, questions of anything they learned and they want to share since last week? No, this week is Ulambana week. Has not anyone thought about repaying kindness of parents, or any stories come to mind? No, not even one. Oh, good. Okay, let me share the slide. Okay. If you have and you are too shy to speak out, you can always type it in the chat box. Okay. All right. What you see in front of you is the 10 Vow of Medicine Master Buddha. And we've covered most of it. We have only a bit left, which is when he says, awesome spiritual power. So I'm going to put my hands together, invite everyone to join me as I recite the 10 Great Vow again. I vow that in a future life, when I attain Bodhi, I shall cause sentient beings who fall into the hands of the law and are bound, interrogated, whipped, fettered, imprisoned, sentenced to execution, or subjected to endless disasters, hardships, abuse, and humiliation, so that they are torn by grief and distress and suffering in body and mind, to obtain upon hearing my name liberation from all worry and suffering by means of my blessings, virtue, and awesome spiritual power. So this is Medicine Master Buddha saying how he's going to help these people. Okay, so in the past vows, he didn't really say, he just says he's going to help them. But in this vow, he's a bit more explicit. He says, by means of my blessings, virtue, and also awesome spiritual power. We talked about blessings and virtue already. I always like to think about someone like, say, someone who's really rich, you know, that's material blessings, and then being able to use that money to help people. Kind of not really what the Buddha has, because the Buddha's blessings are totally differently, but that gives me an idea of using blessings to help. And then we talked about virtue too. What we haven't talked about is awesome spiritual power. What awesome spiritual power does the Buddha have? And then we took a break. And last week we talked about, because it's Ulambana week this week. So last week we talked about repaying, why we should learn to generate gratitude and learn how to be filial, meaning repaying the kindness. First, being able to recognize the kindness of people like parents, and then elders, teachers, and then the second part is once we recognize the kindness that we've received, in order to repay it. And hopefully in future classes, I will devote a class to talk about gratitude. I've been doing some research about gratitude connected to last week's class. And I think gratitude is really interesting because it has to do with a lot of the Bodhisattvas and the Buddha's conduct. And if I am, how you say, I have a personal theory about how gratitude, okay, I'll share it when I'm really sure. Okay, right now it's just a theory. Okay, so moving on, let's talk about the 10 powers of a Buddha. And then once we are done today, what we can do is when we finish talking about the 10 powers, I'm not going to talk about all the 10 powers because honestly, I don't know how to explain all of them. They are, how shall I say, they are above my pay grade. So I'm going to go through maybe 2 or 3 that are a lot more interesting, and I have a story for one of them. And then after that, we go to the vow number 11. And vow number 11 is very interesting as well because it has to do with food. And there's a lot to do when it comes to food and Buddhism. There's a lot to talk about. But first, okay, so 10 powers of the Buddha. The first power is, instead of us trying to pronounce the Sanskrit, I'm just going to do the English. The first power of the Buddha is knowing what is possible and what is not. So the Buddha knows what can be done, what cannot be done, especially for individuals. So like if I stand up in front of the Buddha right now and say, I vow to never get angry again, the Buddha will probably just smile at me and say, maybe you want a vow, you want to make a vow that you can actually succeed in for now. Yeah. So he knows, he can tell just by looking at me, the Buddha would know you better than you know yourself. Yeah. So that's the first power of the Buddha. Okay. Number 2 is knowing the results of all actions with possibilities. So number 2 is kind of, it reminds me of science fiction film movies where they talk about time travel, and then if you do one thing, you alter the future. Well, the Buddha kind of has this power in that whatever you do, the Buddha can see all the possible ways it can cause and effect will play out. And of course, the Buddha doesn't do this just based on that single act that you do, but based on your entire karmic history. So what does this mean? Okay. The Buddha, he can see all your past actions, you know, the past actions you've done. He knows the present actions that you are doing right now. And then from there, he can see what are the future possibilities and causes. So one story that illustrates this ability of the Buddha is a long, long time ago. And this is a very interesting story. I'm using the word interesting a lot today because it is the longest, it is the oldest story that we have of our present Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, in a past life. Yeah. So in this past life of Shakyamuni Buddha, he was known as Sumedha. Okay, and as he was born into a very good family, they call it a Brahmin family. That means a family of gentlemen. But what Sumedha chose to do was to become an ascetic in the mountains. And he wasn't like some ordinary person. Apparently, he had spiritual abilities. So one day he was traveling to a city, and then he sees a lot of people working on a road. So that made him curious as to what they were doing. And so he asked someone, they said, what are you doing? And they said, oh, Dipankara Buddha. So this was during the time of a Buddha called Dipankara. They said, Dipankara Buddha is coming to this city and he's going to travel on this road. So we all are trying to make the road as smooth as possible for the Buddha to travel on. See, what a nice thing to do. Okay, so when Sumedha, who is the Buddha in a past life, when he heard this, he became really, really happy. How happy? He was so happy that he took responsibility for a section of the road. He said, okay, this section, I will be responsible to make it as smooth and as clean as possible, that's deserving of a Buddha. Well, unfortunately, because he was very sincere, he didn't use any of his spiritual abilities because I think that would be like cheating. So he manually put in the work, but he couldn't finish the work in time. So when Dipankara Buddha arrived, there was a small part of the road that had mud and water, and I think there was like a hole in the road that he couldn't fill in time and remove the mud. So what he did was, when Dipankara Buddha came to that portion, Sumedha instead spread out his hair. Okay, he had very long hair because he was an ascetic, so he doesn't go to the hairdresser, or the barber. So he spread out his hair, and then apparently ascetics in ancient times, okay, always wear deer skin and bark garment. That means clothes made from the bark of a tree. I think there are still, traditional cultures in this world that also use tree bark as material for clothes. So what Sumedha did, was he spread out his hair, he spread out his own clothes for the Buddha and his disciples to walk over. And as he did that, he made a vow. His intention of doing that was that in the future, he wanted to become a Buddha. So remember 2 weeks ago, we talked about the difference between blessing and merit is the heart. Well, with this kind of heart, you can figure out whether what Sumedha did falls on the line of blessings or it falls on the other side of the line, which is merit. Okay, so Dipankara Buddha came across Sumedha, and then before walking over him, Dipankara Buddha gave Sumedha a prediction. He said that in a future lifetime, you will be known as Shakyamuni Buddha. Yeah. So Dipankara Buddha, who had this ability of knowing the results of all actions, on the spot gave Sumedha a prediction of Buddhahood. Other examples of Buddhas giving predictions is Shakyamuni Buddha himself. When he became a Buddha, in the Lotus Sutra, he gave predictions to many of his disciples. Okay, so that's number 2. All right, number 3, knowing the various dispositions of beings. What is this? Okay, this is knowing what is, how you say, okay, hold on, let me get my notes in order. Okay, the ability to understand the, how you say, the character or the personality of everybody, and based on that, provide a suitable teaching. Okay, so what does this mean? Well, when the Buddha taught people how to concentrate, he taught them 40 different ways to concentrate. So 40 different objects of concentration. Why? Because some people, for them, concentrating on the breath is how you say, very intuitive, whereas other people who are more visual, they may need visual aid, like the Pure Land practice. There's a visualization component of Pure Land practice, for example. So, and then another way to understand this is for people who had very strong desires, the Buddha would teach them how to meditate on the, how you say, on the actual nature of the human body, which is actually very unclean. If you go inside the body, you'll find that our body isn't very pleasant at all. Yeah. And then for those people who are full of hate and anger, the Buddha would teach them meditation on loving kindness. And then for people who are very proud, he would teach them, this is interesting, for people who are very proud, how he would make them humble. He would teach them the meditation on dependent origination, that everything is just a process. So when you break that down, you realize there's no place for the ego to latch on, I think. Yeah, that's not a personal practice of mine, so I'm not sure. Yeah, and then for those who are very easily distracted, the Buddha will teach them how to meditate on the breath. And just on the breath alone, there are so many ways that you can use breathing to meditate. For example, the air, the sensation of the breath going in at the tip of the nose, or the air going in all the way to your dantian or the stomach. So this is the power number 3, knowing the various dispositions of beings. And then number 4, knowing the diverse elements. What is this? This is the Buddha's ability to know your spiritual development and or the capacity, what you can achieve based on your mental capacity. So what is different from this? This has to do more with the goals rather than the meditative object. You can say that previously number 3 was more on the subject. Number 4 is the result of the subject. So for example, if the Buddha looked at you and he said, oh, this person does not have enough good roots to end birth and death. So what he would do is he would encourage you to seek rebirth in the heavens. And for people who who would not be able to concentrate enough to discover emptiness, then the Buddha would teach the absence of like the soul or anatman to you. Yeah, I hope that makes sense. So with all these powers that the Buddha has, it is said that in a assembly, the Buddha sometimes just have to say one word, or I think in the Avatamsaka syllabary is yeah, one word, and everyone hears differently. Yeah, and all this is because of the Buddha's ability to fully comprehend living beings. So number 5 is knowing the superior and inferior qualities of beings. And then let me move to the next slide. Move. Okay. Number 6 is knowing all the states of existence and nirvana. Number 7 is knowing the defilement, cleansing, and emergence in regard to all meditative absorptions. This is knowing all samadhis and dhyanas and what are their effects. Number 8 is knowing all past lives. And this is not just himself, but everyone else too. And number 9 is knowing all the passing and rebirth of beings according to the karma. And number 10, knowing the extinction of contaminants. Shr Fu would say this is no more outflows. Absolutely no more outflows. So this would be the 10 powers of the Buddha. Okay. Do we have any questions or anyone who knows more want to add or share? Then I have an opportunity to drink some water because the air in California this past 1-2 weeks isn't that great. So I find I have to drink more water when I talk. Anyone? No, nobody? Okay, let's move to this slide, the 11th Great Vow. Okay. I'm going to put my palms together as I recite. I vow that in a future life when I attain Bodhi, I shall cause all sentient beings who are so plagued by hunger and thirst that they create all kinds of bad karma in their quest for food, upon hearing my name and single-mindedly accepting and maintaining it, to be filled with delicious food and drink, and afterward, by means of the flavor of Dharma, to settle in ultimate peace and happiness. So this has to do with people, living beings who are in an extremely pitiable state, where just because just in order to survive, you are forced to do things that will cause you, you're forced to create bad, unwholesome karma. It's not because you want to, it's because if not, you will die. So in the Earth Store Sutra, it says that people who suffer from hunger and thirst is because in a past life, they were what's the word? Okay, so hunger and thirst is caused by gluttony. So in the past, if you are very, very greedy, you remember we talked about what gluttony is in one of the earlier classes. You know, you just want to eat for eating's sake. You're chasing after flavors and taste and texture, and you're not eating for health, to cure hunger. Then if you're not careful, the retribution will be hunger and thirst. So what Medicine Master Buddha is doing is, first, he wants to make them happy. He wants their minds to be calm and peaceful, and they're satisfied. But because this is not a permanent state, you know, when you eat good food, for example, you get happy for a while, and then when you go to sleep and you wake up the next day, you're hungry again. So Medicine Master Buddha, in his wisdom, he wants to turn their minds towards the Dharma so that ultimately their peace and happiness will be permanent. Okay, so the strategy is when you're under suffering and you're being oppressed, the mind cannot think clearly. Why? Because you're not happy. So he makes them happy first. And then he wants to lead them through the Dharma, and he says the flavor of Dharma. See how Medicine Master Buddha connects food to Dharma? Food is connected to Dharma in so many instances in the sutras and all that, and we'll come to that. So once Medicine Master Buddha makes them happy, then he wants to lead them on the path to settle in ultimate peace and happiness. Okay, so what has food got to do with the Dharma? Whoa, a lot. Okay, so Dharma and food, in the Mahapanha Sutta, the Buddha says, all beings subsist by nutriment. Okay, what does this mean? Okay. I'm going to put my palms together because this is the sutra. The Buddha said, monks, when a monk becomes entirely dispassionate towards one thing, when his lust for it entirely fades away, when he is entirely liberated from it, when he sees the complete ending of it, then he is one who, after fully comprehending the goal, makes an end of suffering here and now. And what is that one thing? It says all beings subsist by nutriment. Nutriment is food. When a monk becomes entirely dispassionate towards this one thing, nutriment or food, when his lust for it entirely fades away, when he is entirely liberated from it, and when he sees the complete ending of it, then, O monks, he is one who, after fully comprehending the goal, makes an end of suffering here and now. So it's interesting that through food or through nutriment, nutriment is a larger term for food, and we shall see why in the next slide. The Buddha is saying, just by looking at food, contemplating about food, you can get out of suffering. And as novice monks, this is when it comes to training the mind, food is one of the first few things that a novice monk has to learn how to contemplate. Okay, so in the Ati Raga Sutta, translated as where there is passion, the Buddha said, there are, O monks, 4 nutriments for the sustenance of beings born and for the support of beings seeking birth. What are the 4? Number 1 is physical food, coarse and fine. This is the food that we eat. Coarse, probably, I don't know, very simple food, I guess. Fine would be maybe like if you go to a 3-star Michelin restaurant, or food that's just really, really good, that might be fine food. And then, okay, number 2, 3, and 4 is something else. It's not really food in the sense that we put in our mouths and eat, but it's still things that sustain the body and mind. Okay, so number 2 is contact, or sense impression. Number 3 is volitional thought. And number 4 is consciousness. So the Buddha said, nutriment, we could just call it food. This is what sustains us, and not just sustains us when we are born. If you look at the sentence on top, it says, and for the support of beings seeking birth. When our body ends and we are in the process of seeking rebirth, contact, volitional thought, consciousness plays a really huge role. It propels us forward. So food or nutriment is actually a really big deal. Okay, so our body, from birth to death, never stops. Our craving for material food never ever stops. It is constant. Because why? When you eat, like I said, you eat in the morning, in the afternoon, or the evening, you get hungry already. That's why for some people, eating 1 meal a day is either scary or difficult, because hunger is a real thing. So that's the body, right? And how about the mind? The mind is always hungering for sense impressions like feelings, emotions, ideas. That's the nature of the mind. So we have body that needs sustenance, and then the mind craves sustenance as well. So once you understand this, you realize that the saying, man is what, what's the saying? We are what we eat. Right? There's a saying that we are what we eat. It is more than just the food that we put in our body, but it is the conduct of our mind as well. What are the food that we are feeding our mind? What are our ideas that we generate? Our imaginations, like coming up with all kind of scenarios. Like when you're unhappy with someone, then the mind automatically thinks of all kinds of unreasonable situations for the other person that makes you even more angry than you were already angry with. So that's the nature of the mind. So when you look at yourself this way, you realize that life is not like purely spirit-based, neither is it physical, purely physical either, but it's a nutritional, is a food-driven process that's caused by craving. In other words, you can say that it's a conditioned existence. One causes the other and drives the other. And why is this happening? Well, one of the reasons is impermanence. Impermanence feeds craving and makes it never end. For example, hunger returns. Mentally, we always want new experiences. For example, when we go on, people like to go on vacations and holidays. Why? To take a break. Take a break from what? Your normal everyday life that is so bad that you need a vacation to get away from. And then for some people, they can never go to the same place twice. You always need to go to a new place. I had friends back home. Every weekend, they would always want to look for a new place to eat. They always want to try out new food. So that's the nature of the mind. We want change, we want variety. All this, what does it do? It just feeds our process of rebirth. Okay, so Melinda has a question. Her question is the 10 powers of the Buddha. Buddha refers to Shakyamuni Buddha. It refers to all the Buddhas, Melinda. The 10 powers of the Buddha is like a standard thing that all Buddhas have. Okay. Okay, what else can we talk about Dharma and food? Okay. Since time immemorial, I'm just going to read it. Ordinary people's 6 sense faculties have been following the 6 eternal defiling objects. This is from Shr Fu. Okay. Seeking for sounds and chasing after forms, creating tremendous impure karma. Our eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind are like 6 treacherous accomplices inside our house, who let the thieves in to plunder the family treasures of our nature. Okay, I'm just going to go back to our previous slide. Okay, so our previous slide, we had the first one is physical food, and we all know what that's like. So now the next few slides are talking about the to give more meaning to number 2, 3, and 4. So it's not abstract. Okay, so this is Shr Fu talking about one way that can happen is through our senses, our eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind. What do? Well, the eyes look after forms, the ears, sounds, the nose look after smells, the tongue, taste, the body after feelings and sensations, and the minds after ideas and imaginations. Okay. So Shr Fu goes on to talk about, he gives an example. Shr Fu says, you take the eyes and the ears as an example. Say if the eyes don't see it, then the mouth won't be greedy for it. Like, a very nice representation of the dish. Say if the ears don't hear it, then the mind won't be afflicted. Like someone scolding you. If you don't hear someone scolding you, you won't get afflicted. And it says, when we see people eating delicious things, then our mouth wants to have a taste. And so the mind entertains greedy thoughts about food. And then it says, pleasant sounds make us happy, while unpleasant sounds make us upset. Don't think that the eyes are that great just because they help us see things. It's exactly because of their help that we give rise to all kinds of afflictions. Shr Fu says the other faculties, nose, tongue, body, and mind are the same way. They make one give rise to many afflictions. Okay. So moving on, if you spend any time in the monastery, you will be somewhat familiar with the next few slides. Okay, a few weeks ago, I think it was Miss Chong, I'm not quite sure, had a question, or I had a response about how monastics are trained to always be mindful in everything that they do. Because I think the question was, it's difficult to be mindful. And my response was, it's a training. What you see in front of you in the next few slides are part of that training for all monks and nuns, Mahayana monks and nuns are supposed to memorize. So what are they? If you look at that number 25, all this has to do with food, naturally. Okay, so number 25, if you ever seen a monk or nun eat, when we uncover the bowl, sometimes you look at us and we look really concentrated. It's because we're trying to recall the verse. And now uncover the dust come one's alms bowl, and vow that living beings will equally regard the three wheels as empty and still. Then we chant the mantra 3 times. And then we hold the bowl up to our forehead. After we uncover the bowl, we hold it up to our forehead. And again, you'll see us looking really concentrated. Why? It's because of this verse. When I see an empty bowl, I vow that living beings should be clean and pure in mind, empty and without affliction. And then after you put the food in the bowl, then you say, when I see a full bowl, I vow that living beings will be completely perfect and fulfill all wholesome dharmas. So just eating alone, before we even put the food in our mouths, these are the 3 things that we recall. Hopefully so that our mind is not focused on the delicious food that we get. And we haven't even talked about the meal offering yet, which already makes you more mindful. And I do have the meal offering too. It's just in the next few slides. And then in the morning, if there are lay people around and we have breakfast for the lay people, from the kitchen, there will be a monk or a nun that puts out food for living beings. And number 27 is the verse that they chant. The power of the Dharma is inconceivable. Its kindness and compassion are unobstructed. These 7 grains pervade the 10 directions as a universal offering to worlds as many as sand grains. And then we snap our fingers and then we put out the food. And then 28 is during lunchtime. During lunchtime, you will see in the Buddha hall, the monk or the nun will have that the thing that looks a utensil, one that is like a chopstick with what is shaped like a hand at the end, and then the other one is like a sword, kind of like the sword that not Veito Bodhisattva, the other Bodhisattva, the Dharma protector. It's like a broadsword. So we use that. We take 7 grains of rice that has been cooked, and then what we do is we hold it up to our forehead, and this is the verse that we recite: to the great golden winged peng bird, multitudes of ghosts and spirits in desolate wastelands, and Rakshasa, ghost mother, and all the children, may you be filled with sweet dew. So there's a story about why we do this for the peng bird. The Buddha actually, in a teaching to the peng bird, to prevent the peng bird from eating all the dragons, the Buddha said, from now on, my monks shall put out food for you every time they eat. And for the Rakshasa ghost mother, apparently she used to eat little children. So what the Buddha did was the Buddha took, I think she had like 1,000 children of her own. So in order to teach the Rakshasa ghost mother about how much pain and suffering she's causing to the other mothers of the children, the Buddha hid her son, her younger son, that she loved the most. And when she couldn't find the son, she went to the Buddha and she realized that, oh, me losing one son causes me so much grief and suffering. And when I eat all the other children of all the other mothers, they suffer too. So the Buddha said, from now on, my monks shall put out food for you when they eat. So you don't have to eat little children anymore. And from then on, little children all around the world were safe. Okay. And in the evening, during our evening ceremony, we sent out food too. We don't have to. I don't have to read that out. And then number 30, admonition to the Sangha is this is what we recite during our meal offering. It says the Buddha told the bhikshus while eating, observe the 5 contemplations. Scattered mind and confused talk makes the offerings of the faithful hard to digest. Good assembly at the sound of the bell, each be properly mindful. And then when we hold a bowl too, number 31 is one of the verses that we recite for the monks. And then what we are supposed to do in our first 3 bites is, if you look at number 32, we do these are the 3 great Mahayana vows of cutting off all evil, cultivating all good, and then vowing to save living beings. And what are the 5 contemplations that was in number 30? Well, number 1 is the offering of the faithful is a fruit of work and care. I reflect upon my conduct. Have I truly earned my share? Of the poisons of the mind, the most destructive one is greed. As medicine kills illness, I take only what I need to sustain my practice and to embody awakening. So we contemplate with gratitude, sometimes we say silence, on this offering today. So number 1 is very profound. This offering of the faithful is the fruit of work and care. On the side of the monks, we receive food from based on the generosity of the lay people, of Dharma protectors. So that gives monks and nuns a lot of things to think about. On the side of the lay people, well, think about the food that you get, whether it's food that you buy in a supermarket or in a restaurant, or food that you bring home and you prepare yourself. The food doesn't appear by magic, although it is magical in how you can just walk into a store and get almost anything you want. The only way that can happen is the food has to pass through many, many different hands, many, many different hardships. People have to grow the food, people have to wash, prepare, transport the food, inspect the food, and then finally it comes to you. So there is a lot of gratitude there that you can explore. And then the second one, which is more for monastics or anyone who's ever had food to eat that you don't work for example, is what have you done to earn this food? After it has gone through all those steps, through people who all have lives and difficulties and hardships of their own, what have you done to earn this portion of your food? And then as you're taking the food, are you eating it for taste and flavor? Or, are you looking at your mind and identifying the thoughts of greed that are there? Because greed is a poison of the mind. And if your relationship with the food is just to cure hunger, so as medicine kills illness, I take only what I need. So you don't eat more than you need. You just eat enough. Shr Fu says that the best is to eat up to 80% of your, if 100% is being full, just eat to 80%. That's good enough. Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's go to the next slide. And then when we close the meal, right, we talk about We have the mantra that we recite, and then we say, those who practice making offerings will certainly obtain your reward. They who take delight in giving will later surely find peace and happiness. This is an encouragement to the lay people who have provided the offerings. And then you turn it into a vow. You flip it around and you say, now that the meal has been concluded, we make a vow for all living beings. May they have success in all they do and be perfect in all Buddha dharmas. So throughout the meal, if you have been paying attention to what's going on, there's a lot of things for the mind to contemplate instead of the food itself. Yeah. And when we wash, for monks and nuns, it doesn't end there. When we wash our bowl, I use this bowl washing water with a flavor like heavenly sweet dew to make an offering to all ghosts and spirits. May you all be filled and satisfied. This one I never miss. I never miss doing this. Why? Because there's a story about this monk. One day he received heavenly food. Yeah, this monk, out of the blue, suddenly this heavenly God came and offered him food. And this monk was very surprised. He said, oh, why am I getting heavenly food all of a sudden? And heavenly God told him, he said, oh, well, because you always offer your bowl washing water. Well, I used to be a spirit, a ghost, and I felt a lot of gratitude when you offered your bowl washing water for me to use, for me to eat. So now I'm just returning the favor. So I found that very interesting. And so that's why this is one thing that I never miss. I'll tell you one day if it works. Yeah, what heavenly food tastes like. Okay, so after we do the meal offering, before we eat, my order of slides today is slightly wrong. After we do the offering of to the Buddhas, we do the incense praise, and then we offer the food to the Pengbird. We sit down, we come to the Buddha hall, from the Buddha hall, we walk to the dining hall, we all sit down, and this is what we recite. The color and scent of this and flavor of this food is offered to the Buddhas everywhere, to every sage and worthy one, etc., etc. Then we talk about what we're offering is actually the 3 virtues and the 6 flavors. So 6 flavors, I think, are the 6 parameters. You would not be wrong if you want to interpret the 6 flavors, not literally, but as the 6 parameters. And then the 3 virtues are I want to save all living beings, I want to stop all evil, and I want to do only good. So, and then at the end of the meal, we have the praise and the mantra, wondrous offerings from the heaven's kitchens, bliss of Dhyana's rare, delightful flavor. Okay, there is one part where we talk about dhyana bliss. Okay, and oh wait, let me see. I think I got it wrong. Let me go back to the previous slide. Oh, sorry. Okay, this page 62 and 63 right now. No wonder I felt so weird talking about it, like something was off. This is the actual meal offering. When I said that when we move from the Buddha hall to the dining hall and then we sit down, this is when we are still in the Buddha hall. Yeah, okay. Now it feels more right. So after we finish this, then we walk to the Buddha hall. Okay. We walk to the dining hall. And when we walk to the dining hall and when we sit, then this is what we recite. It says, now we render these offerings to the pure Dharma body, Vairochana Buddha. Okay, then we go to all this. And if you look on the right, page 66, in the middle, it says, now as we have this meal before us, we make a vow for all living beings. May they take dhyana bliss for food and be full with the joy of the Dharma. Okay, what is dhyana bliss? Okay, so next slide, to talk about it, next slide. Okay, dhyana bliss, what is dhyana bliss? And then at the end, we have the same words that we recited about how we should hold our mind when we eat. Do the 5 contemplations and don't have a scattered mind. That means you want to be focused. And it says confused thought, meaning that's why we don't talk. Why? Because we have so much to do with our minds. We have so much to contemplate that if you talk, you're just not following the Buddha's instructions. Okay, maybe before we go to the next slide, I'll talk about dhyana bliss. Okay, so what's dhyana bliss? Okay, Shr Fu says that if you are a chant cultivator, meaning you sit in meditation, and then he says when you enter a state where you forget yourself and you forget others, he says this is the stage of the first dhyana, which is called the stage of happiness leaving birth. It's just a name. You haven't left behind birth and death. It's only the first dhyana. And then Shr Fu says, at this stage, you have broken away from the attachments of living beings and experienced the feeling of taking dhyana bliss as food and be filled with the joy of Dharma. So this is what it means. When we say that may living beings take dhyana bliss for food, we are making a vow, or we are making a wish that living beings learn the Dharma, and through the Dharma they learn how to regulate their behavior, their body and mind so well that when they meditate, they can enter samadhi or dhyana, the first dhyana at least. And then in the first dhyana, that's where you take dhyana bliss for food. So Shr Fu says in the first dhyana, your breathing stops. You no longer physically breathe in and out like through your nose. And then there is a unique happiness that is wonderful. And basically it's a happiness out of this world. And unfortunately, Shr Fu says this happiness is one that most people never get to experience because a lot of people don't get the chance to find out if they are capable or not. They don't give themselves the opportunity. And then from the first dhyana, Shr Fu says you can, if you make progress, you enter the second dhyana. And he says this is the stage of happiness that brings concentration. And Shr Fu also says this is also taking the joy of chant as your food and being filled with the bliss of Dharma. Yeah. Okay. And then in the third dhyana, you leave behind all these feelings already. Yeah. Okay. So what else does Shr Fu have to say about food? Well, he says our body depends on food to survive. However, this kind of food is coarse. In addition, we also rely on the Buddha nature and the bright light of wisdom to survive. Okay, so Shr Fu talks about what we all know, which is food that we eat, but Shr Fu is pointing to something else on our spiritual side. Shr Fu says on the coarse level, our body needs food and drink. On a finer level, our souls need the spiritual nourishment of the Buddha's nature. So Shr Fu says ordinary people don't understand this principle. They think people can survive on just food and drink, but skilled cultivators concentrate on food for the soul. They enjoy sitting in chant meditation and developing samadhi. By being in touch with the Buddha's wisdom light, they replenish their energy and increase their wisdom power. So in the beginning, we had the Buddha speaking about the 4 different kinds of nourishment. So the first one is physical food. So the other 3 correspond to the mind. So what Shr Fu is saying that if you really want to feed your spirit, this is how you do it. This is at a final level. So meditation, reciting the Buddha's name, for example. I have some notes about what Bodhidharma has to say about this. So to understand more about what Shr Fu just said, okay, Bodhidharma outlines it as 5 types of food. What are the 5 types of food? So Bodhidharma says there's delight in the Dharma. This is the delight that comes from acting in accordance with the Dharma. What does this mean? Well, for example, taking the precepts. You take the precepts, and then once you understand how to hold the precepts well, and then when you begin to embody the precepts, the word for it is you become blameless. In everything that you do, you don't have any regrets. You don't do anything that makes you wish you would have done it in a more skillful way, because you understand the spirit of the precepts and you hold it in a really natural way. And so everything that you do, you don't feel remorse. So this is the delight that comes from acting in accordance with the Dharma. You do all the things that the Buddha says is good for you. Okay. What is the second type of food? Harmony in meditation is what Shr Fu was talking about earlier as well. He says it's the harmony of body and mind that comes from seeing through subject and object. That means you gain a bit of wisdom by through your meditation. Third is interesting. He says third is invocation, the invocation of Buddhas with both your mouth and your mind. What is this? Pure land practice. And you recite Amitabha's name, or you do any practice like the Great Compassion Mantra, Om Mani Padme Hum, recite, counting your breathing, and you dedicate the merit of your practice to the Pure Land. This is it. Okay. That's not entirely correct. Actually, Bodhidharma is quite specific in this, number 3, sorry. Invocation of the Buddhas with both your body and mind refers more specifically to recollecting the virtues of the Buddha and Pure Land practice. Okay, all right. Okay, number 4, he says, is resolution. The resolution to pursue virtue, whether walking, standing, sitting, or lying down. That means no matter what you're doing, you are always having the precepts in mind. Virtue. And number 5 is liberation. This is the ultimate. This is the liberation of your mind from worldly contamination. What's worldly contamination? Remember the slide earlier, Shr Fu talking about the 6 senses? Eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind. Okay. According to Bodhidharma, at this number 5, the liberation of your mind from worldly contamination, it's not that you lose your 6 senses, but Shr Fu would describe it as seeing without seeing, hearing without hearing. That means your senses are still there, but you are no longer confused by them. And when you use them in skillful ways, you don't have any attachment. Okay, I just realized that it's time. It's 1 hour has gone by. Wow. I have a few more slides that if people don't mind, I'll just take a few more minutes to show you the slides. So Shr Fu says the secret to cultivation, tada, eat less and reduce desire. So why we still have ignorance, we still have afflictions, and we don't have our wisdom unveiled, is because we crave for food and sex. Very simple, food and sex. And then Shr Fu explains that food gives rise to sexual desire, and then sexual desire gives rise to ignorance. Say if you're born, when we're born, we already know how to eat. And if we don't get what we want, like a baby, they just cry and cry and cry until you satisfy its hunger. So we are born with that. And then when we have desire for food, all other desires arise as well. And so this is Shr Fu's instructions for eating. He said, if you just eat your fill, then that's okay. You shouldn't pay any attention to whether the food is good or bad. He says the important thing is not to have a lot of false thinking about what you eat, and then you won't have any outflows. Okay, so the rest of the slides are just mainly, okay, I'll go through the slides and I'll let you all decide what you want to do at the end, all right? Okay, this is more along the same things. Shr Fu is cautioning us not to view our daily food like someone who, is really, really into good food. Shr Fu is, when he gave this particular passage, it was during the Guanyin session. So he says, if you are really reciting Guanyin's name, you wouldn't even think about wanting to eat tasty food because your mind would be so concentrated. So this is Shr Fu's instructions during Guanyin. It's the same for, we just finished our Amitabha recitation, it would be the same. If you had really been reciting Amitabha's name, you wouldn't have been thinking about lunch. So Shr Fu says we should eat only enough to sustain our life. We should take food as medicine, taking a bit to sustain ourselves, to cure hunger. If not, you would die. And then he says we don't have to pay a lot of attention to nutritious food, you know, because why? Too much nutritious food and you have trouble. So simple, don't have to go overboard. And paying too much attention to food, you have to remember that as a nutriment, food is the one that causes us to be reborn again and again and again. So you have to be careful. So Shr Fu emphasizes here about vitamins and says the body is just a stinking skin bag. It's just a false combination of the four elements. He calls us slaves because why? We do a lot of things in order to maintain our body. But what does our body do to us? It's going to betray us one day. So Shr Fu says if we still can't see through the body and put it down, and we continue to slave and toil for it, we are really wasting our time. You know, we earn money so we can buy beautiful clothes to adorn our body, pay a lot of money. I paid a lot of money to cut my hair before I became a monk. Yeah. Why? Because I wanted to look good. I was really vain. And then Shr Fu, this is very important. Shr Fu talks about how if the connection between things that disasters and calamities that happen in the world to our choices in food. A lot of things that, for example, have to do with food. For example, the things that we discussed last week. The Buddha says that throughout time, it is difficult to find a living being that has not been your father, mother, brother, or sister in a past life. This is why we should be vegetarians. We should have a plant-based diet. Because how can you eat something that has close connection with you? Not only that, when living beings have to die, there's a lot of resentment and anger that they carry around. And Shr Fu attributes a lot of the natural disasters to all this. So Shr Fu says, calamities occur because the universe is filled with the enmity generated by slaughter. Recently in the news there was I read about two young boys who I think they were maybe 16 or 17 years old, and they killed a man who was in his 40s with he had a family. They killed him by stabbing him 100 times with a long sword, like a samurai sword. And when the police came, they were in the middle of trying to the police said they were sawing his head off his body. They were trying to separate his head from the body. And in my understanding, when we consume living beings for food, what happens is they become less than human. They become less than living beings. The ability to kill a living being means that we don't recognize that that's a living thing. And it is the same habit energy that when it comes back, the person that gets killed feels the same way. The person that gets killed will wonder, how can you do this to a fellow human being? Don't you see that I am a human being as well? Can't you see that? Like, what is wrong with you? Like, why are you trying to kill me? So the habit energy propelling the other person is the same thing. It comes back to a lack of compassion. the lack of ability to see that this is a living being that wishes to be happy and well. We get confused because they appear different to us. They appear in the form of animals, in the form of fish, and because we get confused, we see them as less than living or less than human. But the habit energy, I can't articulate this well. It's more a feeling and emotion. I'm not even sure if it's a memory, but yeah. So Shr Fu wants us to really pay attention to our choices in our diet, and if possible, move towards a plant-based diet, so that at the very least we don't accrue unwholesome karma for our own future. Yeah. Okay, I have a few more slides which I will keep for next week because we are definitely running out of time. So question and Tammy says, Down Master reference number 27, 28, snap fingers. What is the purpose, meaning of snapping fingers? I think snapping fingers is a way of getting the attention. I think it's getting the attention, like, hey, okay, like that. So number 33, part 5, which you elaborate to embody awakening. Let me see. Where's that slide? 23. Wait. Oh, 33, sorry. Embody awakening. Well, I like to talk about precepts as if you really understand precepts and you hold it long enough, it becomes natural. When it becomes natural, you embody the precepts. The precepts become part of you. You don't have to hold the precepts because naturally you will not break the precepts. It becomes natural. So I guess here, to sustain my spiritual practice and to embody awakening, it means that you are so focused with the precepts, you are so focused on what you need to do in your daily schedule and all that, that it becomes effortless. And you don't have to force yourself to do certain things. You just do it naturally because you understand why. Okay, I'm going to put my palms together. Sorry for taking so much time today. Thank you for your patience. May every living being, our minds as one and radiant with light, share the fruits of peace with hearts of goodness, luminous and bright. If people hear and see how hands and hearts can find in giving unity, may their minds awake to great compassion, wisdom, and to joy. May kindness find reward. May all who sorrow leave their grief and pain. May this boundless light dispel the darkness of their endless night. Because our hearts are one, this world of pain turns into paradise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise. All right, thank you everyone for joining today's class. I have a few more slides about Buddhism and food, and they are also very interesting. And I'll keep them for next week. In the meantime, during your next meal, look at your mind. What does your mind do, and where does your mind go as you eat? All right. Okay. Bye, everyone.
JinHe,
Yes.
this is Peggy. I don't have WeChat. I just send you in the group chat my email. Could you send me the mantra? Yeah.
Yes, I will.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay. Bye.
All right.
Amitabha, everybody. Thank you, Fa Shi.
Bye bye.
Thank you, Pastor.
Bye-bye.